joining us is the member for Hinkler, Keith Pitt. Very keen to get your thoughts, though, first of all, on the government's response to the flooding impact on North Queensland. 100 million in grants and loans approved for the flood recovery in North Queensland. A further 5 million committed today, Keith, from the Prime Minister in order to tackle a land-destroying weed which apparently has been generated in the wake of those floods.
Well, prickly acacia is one of those invasive weeds which has taken over hundreds of thousands of hectares, particularly in the far west. And what we know is that each individual pod has hundreds of thousands of seeds. They travel down our waterways, and clearly when you have flood events like the one we had earlier in the year, that certainly transport those seeds to places it's never been before. You've got to keep on top of it, otherwise it quite simply takes over your properties.
We do know there has been some complaints about people dealing in particular with insurance companies around Townsville. What are you as a government doing to make sure people are getting the support they need after these floods?
Well, look, I'm standing in my electorate office, which is about 2 blocks from where the flood pulled up in 2013 in Bundaberg. I mean, the people of this region know exactly what the people of Townsville and others are going through. It can be incredibly difficult. Particularly around insurance, this is something we've dealt with before. So I'm very pleased with Scott Morrison's immediate reaction. I mean, he's been very strong, very clear. Money is being delivered very quickly and very early, and I think we've learned the lessons from the floods that we've had here and other places around Australia.
Let's look at some other issues now, and the debate around nuclear energy has started again in the context of trying to reduce our emissions but also put our energy system on a sustainable footing. Do you think the technology is emerging to make this a far more viable option in the medium term?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, that is the key question. It is the purpose of the inquiry which Angus Taylor has launched. We need to be able to inform ourselves as to whether this technology has moved. Certainly from what I've read over recent months and discussions with organisations like the Institution of Engineers, there is that possibility. But every member and senator has to be able to inform themselves. We need to be able to look at what that technology is. We need to be able to take advice. And this is just a clear-eyed look at what's going on in the rest of the world. So it's nothing to be frightened of. Certainly shouldn't be something that a scare campaign has run on from the Labor Party. And this is very early days.
The inquiry has been asked to look at whether the idea should be around smaller reactors rather than one large nuclear reactor. Is that what you're pushing for in particular?
Well, I'm just asking for a conversation with the Australian people. Small modular reactors, I think, are potentially the way of the future. My understanding is there are 3 or 4 which are already operational. There's another half a dozen under construction and probably another 12 to 15 which are in early stages. So I think this is technology which has moved. We are able to look at what other world organisations and countries and individuals are doing, and I think it's the right time. I think the Australian people want us to find the solution for what has been a very difficult challenge. The answer is not in intermittent wind and solar. Quite simply, they can't run the Australian economy. They're not reliable enough. There needs to be a mixture of generating sources, and this is quite simply an inquiry so we can inform ourselves and hopefully inform the Australian people.
It's interesting because others, such as Bill Gates, are expressing a similar sentiment, actually, Keith Pitt. I'm not sure if you've seen his comments, but some of his foundations are looking at investing in smaller modular nuclear power, which actually does avert some of the traditional concerns that you might have around that particular energy.
Oh, well, I must have missed his call, but I'm sure he'll ring back. But small modular reactors, I think, do provide that opportunity. They fail safe. They're a passive safety system, which means no one needs to push a button or change a valve or do anything to make the system safe in the event of some sort of failure, whether that's through a supply or a mechanical pump or otherwise. We know that they don't need large amounts of water. There's lots of different types of cooling system now, including some trials on sodium cooling. So I think it is the right time to look at this technology. It is a discussion with the Australian people first and foremost. They will let us know if they are ready for us to do something with this technology, if it's proven viable.
The thing is, beyond viability, you mentioned before that you don't want to see any scare campaigns and you don't want to see any kind of fear of nuclear power, but there are very justified fears around nuclear power from Chernobyl, from Fukushima. That's a real risk that Australians are concerned about.
Well, and this is what the purpose of the inquiry is. I mean, my understanding is the first reactor in Fukushima commenced construction in 1967. The world has moved on, whether you look at mobile phones or safety in vehicles or pretty much anything else in industry. So I think you really can't compare what happened in those sites that were constructed in the late 60s and early 70s with what the current technology is. Once again, this is the purpose of the inquiry. We want to have a discussion and we need to be able to inform ourselves, other members and senators, and of course the Australian people, and then we can look as to whether we move somewhere else from there.
I want to get your thoughts on Andrew Hastie's piece in the Sydney Morning Herald today, in which he compares our inability and of our like-minded nations to deal with the rise of China to the inability to prevent the rise of Nazi Germany. Is that an appropriate comparison to be making?
Well, all humble backbenchers are entitled to their view, as you know, as I am. Obviously, China, in terms of where it sits with other world powers, is moving and moving forward. We are working closely with the US, with our other counterparts, and of course with China, who is a major trading partner. Last time I checked, there's about $170 billion in two-way trade with China for Australia. They're an important market for us. And of course, we will work with them as we do with other countries right around the world.
You say humble backbencher, but Andrew Hastie is a former SAS officer and also the head of the Parliament's powerful Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence and Security. So he's not just your everyday backbencher, is he?
Oh, I like to think we're all our everyday backbencher. We all have roles in different committees, particularly around the chairmanships and others. And he obviously has an invested view given his previous experience. But that's what happens on our side of politics. Many of us come from business and from other locations. We don't just work our way through as a political staffer or as an activist inside the union movement. So people base their views on their experience and what they've done in their former lives, and he's entitled to his view, as are others.
Just on his opinion piece, do you agree that China right now is the equivalent to Nazi Germany in the 1930s?
Oh, I mean, that's not the choice of words that I would make. As a former minister in the trade portfolio, we work very closely with our trading partners in a very respectful way. But, as I've said, individuals entitled to their own views, particularly backbenchers. We'll continue to work with not only China but with our other trading partners. Obviously, we have key security alliances with the US and Britain and others. They will continue to be maintained. We've had AUSMIN just in the last week, which I think has been very successful. But we need to ensure that we do continue with a rules-based system. Otherwise, chaos results.
I wouldn't imagine the Prime Minister would be entirely pleased with this intervention. Doesn't make things too easy.
Oh, look, I worry about what I say, and I haven't had to call from the PM in recent days or weeks. And I'm pleased he's back in Queensland. I think that's just a great recognition of what happened, particularly at the last election, and the fact that we do need support after a big flooding event like they've had in the north. I mean, it's just such tragic circumstances, and the people up there need to know that as a government we are doing everything we possibly can to help them.
I don't think you'll get any complaints today from Mr Morrison either. Keith Pitt, thanks for that.